our 5 regions and try to serve our members in a digital manner as good as we did it before in an analog way. So that is our contact. So everybody who wants to have it, please feel free to ask later on to receive the presentation or the details. So before I go to the topic of lobbyism, our topic today, so does someone have a question so far? So don't hesitate to post a question in the chat or ask them directly. If there is no question, I will proceed with my input on lobbyism. Okay. So lobbyism, so what are we talking about and how's the situation in Germany? So lobbyism, if you take really a basic definition, is about representing certain interests and bringing the interests and positions to others. In this case, of course, mostly to politicians. And the main goal, of course, is to influence decisions. That is the main goal and of a lobbyist, of institutions. So a lobby can represent an economic sector, a sports association, environmental protection organization, for example. So the range is very broad, and it's not only about businesses or lawyers who can be lobbyists. For example, students active in a student council and wants the teachers to do something, can be lobbyists for their topics and interests. So a lobby can really be big with companies, or can really small with only 3 or 4 people doing something in their own environment, for example, at universities. Lobbyists, of course, try to influence politicians' decisions, for example, by talking to them, organizing events, organizing formats, but the relation is not a one-way relation. So for politicians, it's important to have an exchange with representatives of different groups to get information, to get insights from them, helping to make their decisions better prepared. So lobbying therefore plays a big role in a political decision-making process. On the one hand, for politicians, getting information, getting insights from certain sectors, industries, or from other groups in a society, and of course for the organized interests to, of course, positioning themselves in the process of lawmaking and decision making. As a first little summary of the introduction, lobbyism is a bartering business. So lobbyists try to influence decisions of decision makers, of lawmakers, and offer at the same enhanced information and knowledge. So that is the ideal, typically understanding of lobbyism. So it's a give and take, and not a give and take in a gray zone, but a transparent give and take. So what lays behind this understanding, or where I understand it here? So most theories of democracy and of state theory and similar acknowledge that the society consists of several groups, defined, for example, by the socio-economic situation, defined by political views, gender, or others. So that means different interests in a society, which should be voiced and find a place in the political public decision and decision-making process. So this lays behind this understanding of exchange and of give and take and exchange information. So political systems like in Germany and in the European Union are based on this pluralistic assessment of the society and this pluralistic understanding that there are different groups in the country in the political discussion, and that the different groups needs a voice and should be heard by decision makers and politicians. Now, I would go a little bit back to history and discuss a bit the question, how this all developed with a focus on Germany, because this is our topic today, lobbying in business with a focus on Germany. So during the period of industrialization in Europe and in Germany in the 19th century and the emerge of nation states, the first organized interest groups formed in Europe and in Germany. Together they hope to bring greater weight to bear on the political scales and thus exert influence on the state decision-making bodies. At the same time, for example, in Germany, the Central Association of German Industrials was established, or the Association of German Farmers is one of the first organized interest groups were founded in the 19th century in Germany. Both the social, political and economic landscape have changed fundamentally, of course, since then, and lobbying, of course, with them. While the large traditional interest groups like associations and trade unions, for example, are struggling with dwindling membership numbers, the number of lobbyists trying to place their concerns on the political agenda in Berlin and Brussels as well is on the rise. So we see much more actors and stakeholders in the previous decades. So the pressure of globalization and the increasing pluralization of interests are causing problems for example, associations and organized interests. Nevertheless, the association system in Germany has shown a somehow astonishing continuity in the last 70, 80 years after the Second World War, despite all dynamic changes that comes from international trends like globalization or individualization. Having said this, at the same time, the chambers of industry and commerce still are responsible for regional policy matters. So that means in Germany we have this chambers of commerce and industries at the one hand, and on the other hand, some so-called free business associations organized under private law and according to sectors, which are looking after the economic political interests of their membership and of particular interests, and not serving the interests of the whole business. A third pillar in Germany, beside these chambers of commerce, the industrial organized associations according to sectors. The third pillar are the employers association. They take care about the social and collective bargaining terrain for themselves. So that means after the Second World War, the system of the three-pillared system was established and is still working now, despite the developments I described before. As a result of a rapid Europeanization and globalization and the resulting economic structural change we saw in the last years, the trend towards an enhanced and sectoral differentiation and pluralization of interests become more and more important in the last years. Therefore, typical services of associations such as collection, selection, and articulation of interests are no longer in such a high demand or in the focus, at least by influential industries such as automotive industry or the energy sector. Even if the blocking power and the steering potential of associations may have weakened overall in the recent times, they are still by no means perceived as superfluous today. So that's very important. It's still important. In retrospect, the entrepreneurial association system in Germany shows a high degree of continuity, and that applies both to the traditional division of labor in the form of chambers of industry, of commerce, employers association, and trade association, and that is still the cornerstone of the German system of organized interests. The pluralization of society in the 20th century and in the 21st century has also brought a pluralization of interests, as I mentioned. So in addition to this typical associations, a multitude of social groups business representations, NGOs, public affairs agencies, contracted lobbyists, law firms, and so on and so forth entered the stage of political consultancy during the past decades. So that means lobbying has become a more professionalized and a whole ecosystem of consultants and service providers that has grown around it, and of course of specializing on advocacy for very specific interests. So we see a grown pluralization. We have organized associations, organized interests, and others, actors and stakeholders becoming more and more present and active on the market of representing interests in Germany. When it comes to the current discussion on lobbyism in Germany, so there's always a question, is lobbyism good or bad? So I touched a bit this question in my introduction, and we'll discuss a bit now the next minutes the question if lobbyism is good or bad. So critics very often consider the development of lobbying to be dangerous, or blaming the system as intransparent and prone to corruption. So as non-democratically, there's no democratic legitimization, and that people has influence on political decisions which are not elected, for example, by the people and the voters. Other stakeholders criticizing too much inequality among the lobbies themselves as a result of unequal resources, financial resources, resources of contacts of the network, access to members of parliament, and access to the government and other decision makers. Advocates of lobbying counter that advocacy is a fundamental part of the democratic process. In an increasingly complex society, politicians are more than ever dependent on the expertise and advice of specialists to make informed and responsible decisions. Moreover, lobbying is not only open to large companies and industry associations, lobbying also offers small associations the opportunity to become politically active, to exert their influence. So when it comes to the specific German discussion, the public attitude in Germany towards lobbyism is, in a nutshell, not a good one. So anyone who makes profit is basically a bit suspicious of a broad majority of the German society. Also, no one is shaking the principle of the social market economy in Germany. Making money likes to appear somehow reprehensible. So far, lobbyism for environment, for example, or pro-animal campaigns is considered very often as purely good, and lobbyism for example, industry interests, industry needs is considered often as mostly bad or shabby or intransparent. So that are the, I know it's black and white, but that are the two big trends or the views how we have it here in Germany. Let's make an example with the pharmaceutical industry in reports and survey the image of the industry, of the pharmaceutical industry. It's often that they make high profits on the backs of patients. That is regularly conveyed. The fact that drug manufacturers, on the other side, develop and offer products with real added value, namely for people's health, on the basis of years of expensive high research, is very often neglected or underestimated in the public discussion. In contrast, organizations like Greenpeace, for example, to name it, or other environmental organizations, are not perceived very often as lobbyists, even though they are also professionally acting, and they represent the interests the same like a pharmaceutical company. Of course, goals such as sustainability, environmental protection, and clean food, for example, are indisputable and worth pursuing. But at the same time, society is also dependent on a functioning economy, the cornerstone of which are healthy companies, of course. These in turn depend on good political framework conditions that allow them to do business. So, and I guess people should have the right to voice this anyway. So the social market economy is a social consensus in Germany. So against this background, it is indispensable that business community discusses with politicians how framework conditions need to be adapted and changed. And the decision makers in the German parliament and in the ministries depend on this dialogue. That is that we are convinced of. So they actively demand it in order to find out from different perspectives how industry and the economy are changing and what companies need to create or maintain jobs. But of course, for the future, it is clear that we need clear rules for lobbying, and that transparency is king. Without transparency and a transparent system of lobbying, we will be stuck in a bad surrounding and with bad discussions around lobbyism. So maybe I will now go to the current discussion on the lobby register in Germany, and that is the last point of my introduction, or of my points I would like to make now for the input. So the current discussion on implementing the lobby register in Germany is based on some cases in the previous 4 or 5 years of some members of parliaments and some ministers, where we had some cases that were really criticized, that ministers and members of parliament had some not known connections to some companies, and that they used their functions in the parliament and the ministries to advocate the interests of this specific companies. So that behavior brought out a discussion that we need a lobby register in Germany. So what should this planned lobby register contain? The main demand is that lobbyists would have to enter in a register, among other things, their name, whose interests they are representing, which industries they are working for, and where the client is located. Therefore, the planned register is reminiscent of the already existing public lobby list of the German parliament, but should be now not voluntary anymore, but should be obligative. The most important change in the current discussion is that the entry in the register is now compulsory, as I mentioned. And anyone who does not register or provide false information commits an administrative offense and should have to pay up to 50,000 euros. Furthermore, the lobby register is to contain some additional information, for example, how many lobbyists a company or an association has commissioned. And lobby agencies too must now name the client, which was not provided for an earlier draft and would have been a loophole so far. So this, in a nutshell, on this lobby register was that is very latest news that the ruling coalition in Germany decided yesterday in the parliament that this law should become into force in spring. So this discussion is really a hot topic right now in German politics, and I guess that we will see during this year this law implemented and having a more transparent approach to lobbyists being around in the government and the parliament. A last remark: the position of the German business, which I represent as well. So the big German industrial associations really are in favor for such a transparent lobby register. So 2 years ago, in 2019, 6 organizations formed an alliance for lobby transparency, among them the big German business associations. Because our position is that lobbying is essential cornerstone of a pluralistic and democratic society, but lobbying must be transparent. So everybody should see who was with whom in contact and what are the interests of certain interest groups and who is paying the interest group. That is very important. That means as a summary of my words, pluralism of interests is an essential component of the society in Germany. The same applies to the freedom to organize these interests and to represent them in the public discourse. So the exchange and cooperation between politics and interest groups is essential for mutual understanding and leads to the point that lawmakers are benefiting from the knowledge, and hopefully that the exchange boosts the mutual understanding. So central to the acceptance of lobbying in the future will be the creation of standards and the establishment of mechanisms to ensure compliance with these standards. Transparency and traceability are the crucial elements and keywords for this future acceptance of lobbyism. So I hope I kept the time I had and tackled some point of interest for you, and now open for your questions or for discussion with you. And thank you very much so far. So Luisa, you are muted if you are talking.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Stefan. It was very interesting discussion. I mean, it's not an interesting topic, and my question would be, what's your recommendation for Azerbaijan case? What kind of things we should do in order to reach the European level, let's say? If it is a bit, could be a strange question, but my interest is.
I guess the most important, or the main topic, the crucial point is transparency. I draw a bit the discussion in Germany. So we have several stakeholders in the discussion who do not neglect lobbyism and exchange with government and lawmakers, but it's very important for the acceptance in the population that you have transparency mechanisms. That means how should it work? Who is allowed to approach whom, and does this rule applies to everybody, to all, or are there exceptions? And from my point of view, transparency is very important. Acceptance is very important. Acceptance in the populations, because in the end they are the voters. So they vote for the government in elections or for the parliament, and they, from my point of view, they can expect that decisions are taking in favor for the whole country and for the whole voters and population, and not only for very certain defined interests who had the most money to push the topics most forward. So you can do this, but this will lead to less legitimization of decisions, to non-acceptance of decisions. So that is the question: where are your goals? So I just can speak from a German perspective. This topic of acceptance, of transparency is very, very, very important. So, but this is of course in countries that
can change from country,
which are where's the matrix, and where are the points which are from a high importance. So that's why it's hard to comment from outside what should be changed as a point. If I have in mind our members as companies, of course they sometimes have issues in Azerbaijan and ask, okay, what can we do? Of course, what we always say is that processes tender processes, for example, must be transparent, that we have a level playing field. We do not demand a special access of German companies, but what we demand is a level playing field, so that each stakeholder has a the same right to participate in processes, for example. That is very important, and not the demand for a special right for a special company, but a level playing field. That is very important.
Thank you very much for your broad answer. Other questions? Başka sual olan var? Tereddüt etmeyin. Sual verin uşaqlar. Sometimes I just started talking in Azerbaijani because I'm just trying to prompt them to ask a question. As a person who knows this geography, this place, you know, it's not they are not asking because there is no question they didn't understand, but they are shy and there is a fear of expressing themselves not correctly in English. That's the case.
That's fine. Just start speaking. I'm not sure that my input was 100% fine Oxford English, but the most important thing is that we understand.
Yeah, that's right. İnşallah İngiliscə danışanda səhv etməkdən də çəkinmək lazım deyil qətiyyən. Narahat olmayın. Xahiş edirəm suallarınızı ünvanlayın. Let's wait for 1 minute. If there are questions,
I'm fine.
Yeah, because the main idea is not asking questions. Main idea is that how we try and how we push our ideas to spread.
May I ask a question, or may I bring some figure in and have a question to you? So we have in Berlin so far, the German Parliament. For now, we have a list where associations or companies can register as a influential group. Put it like that. In Berlin, we have on this list more than 2,000 institutions registered. I know in Brussels, at the EU, the number is about 20,000. So do you have such a list or overview in Azerbaijan as well, or what are is there any regulation? As I said, each country has a very different approach on the topic. And so now in Berlin so far we had this list. It was voluntary. Now we will move to a public register where contacts are traced. So how is the situation in Baku?
I'm not sure that I can be the person to answer your question, because it's out of my interest, let's say, and it's out of my skills. I mean, it's not about skill, the interest area, let's be more correct. No idea. But I think that this process is started already. Okay. And I'm sure that very soon it will be realized, and the lists will be long lists. It's not about the number of the lists, it's about the quality and your actions. It's kind of thing. It's my own approach. I mean, it doesn't matter. It could be on different areas. This is my own approach. Okay, I think that we don't have any people who would like to or wish to ask a question. Let's say it's almost 40 minutes or 45 minutes, just we are lasting. I'm sure that it's already.
Excuse me, I have a question, Mr. Stefan.
Yeah, please.
It's a little bit personal, but I need your advice about improving your business idea. What's your advice on it? For example, you can tell me books to read or any other methods to improve your business idea. Thank you.
Oh, I have to confess the days of my studies are laying back some years, and in the meantime, I'm not really working on developing business ideas. So of course we are able. So that means, to be honest, I can't pass a link list to you and recommending books. What we do is working with our members, with our companies, and having a deep exchange with them, trying to place their interests to government decision makers. For example, we will have with Azerbaijan in the beginning of June, the German-Azerbaijani high-level governmental working group, where we, for example, discuss with the government these current issues companies have with regards to Azerbaijan. But unfortunately, I'm not the right person. I'm not the right person to do a kind of business coaching. Unfortunately, not. So as you said, that's not my scope so far, and I'm not sure if I'm the right person to give you advice to grow your business.
Thank you very much.
Sorry
Thank
for
you.
that.
No, thanks. Thanks.
But maybe what came to my mind now is in Germany, they have in Baku the German-Azerbaijani Foreign Trade Chamber, and I know that they offers from time to time seminars and webinars and briefing. I know that they do this kind of topics as well from time to time. Maybe it's a good idea to contact them and to check their website if they offer seminars or some recommendations regarding this topic. I know they offer a range of webinars and seminars on very practical issues. So the German-Azerbaijani Foreign Trade Chamber, AHK, in Baku.
Anyway, you
All right.
directed correct, I think. You supported, I think, that it's good idea, good advice. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a
Please.
question?
Please.
Okay, I just want to ask you, what do you think about smart cities and digital trades? Because I'm so interested in these topics. Does every country should make it real or achievable?
So what we see is that this topic of digitalization got in the previous 5 to 7 years really a boost, because companies discovered that they could have better business models, earning more money, going digital with their supply chains, with their customer relations. We see the trend that states, cities follow those trends as well. Using Azerbaijan is a very good example with Azan, offering these services online. In other countries like in Estonia, in Ukraine, in others, they copying this kind of, not copying, but they pursue this way as well, to go more digital and to bring more services to the digital life and moving back from paper. From my point of view, it has a big future. It's very simple. It makes processes more efficient, and more efficient processes means saving money, saving more money, and having the option to earn more money. And that's for me the reason why I'm rather optimistic. This is smart city solutions, that more digital solutions will be developed and will be implemented, because it's a very efficient approach for states, for companies, for cities to organize their processes and to offer their services and products. That means that's a purely decision a bit determined by your wallet. If you can save money and earn more money, you will do it in the end. And that's why, beside all other things, there is a high dynamic in this topic, and we see that more companies demanding development capacities. That is the thing we are working on in our region, in our countries, in Ukraine, for example, with Russia as well. And as I said, Azerbaijan has this Asan offering. So in some points, especially in these points, you are ahead of Germany, because we are lacking this kind of online management system public services. So, but I think it will come, and it's hard to stop anymore because it's more efficient. Yeah, as I said.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, can I have a question, please?
Yep.
What do you think about Ausbildung in Germany?
Yeah, that is, you mean this vocational training, yeah?
Yes.
In companies, yeah. So that is in Germany, that's really a cornerstone of our educational system after school. And we have lots of professions built or based on this vocational training system, on this Ausbildungssystem, and that is very important. On the end, we have lots of companies who has a need of educated people in this vocational training system, and are able really to pay a good salary for people with a vocational training. I guess it's very important, and I see it in the countries I'm working with, that you always have the question or always discussion that people want to pursue university degree because they earn more money with this university degree, and it's more recognized in the society. And vocational training and Ausbildung is less recognized or has a less good renommé in comparison to a university degree. But in Germany, as I told you, sometimes you can really earn more money with a vocational training degree than with a university degree. So it's very important to build a sustainable manufacturing industry. You need blue-collar workers, you need engineers, you need people with vocational training skills, and not only chiefs. You know, that is very important. And maybe that is one of the secrets of the German success model of this small and medium-sized enterprises, that we still have a big pool of people coming from this vocational education training system, and not only people from universities.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Please.
Maybe my excuse me, Professor. Maybe my question will be a bit different, a bit far from the other who asked question. As you, doctor, one who is specialized in business, and I have a question which will be a bit different. As a one who study at political science faculty in Muslim Caspian University, I wanted to ask a question: that does the political lobby groups have an effect on business or not? What kind of effect it will be, negative or positive?
You mean that political groups influences businesses, yeah? So the way around. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So when we have a look to Germany, I'm not sure if you can really divide this process in one way, business to politics, and another process, politics to business, because it's always a kind of give and take. Yeah. So that means when we have meetings with politicians, with decision makers, of course we want to voice our positions, the positions of our companies' interests, and of course want that politicians change something. But at the same time, very often politicians, of course, uses these talks to address their wishes. Of course, that means it's lobbying in both sides. Yeah. That means you have, of course, the meetings and the discussions, and it's very often used by both sides to address their wishes and positions. But I guess it's not that organized, I would like to say. Or politics do not have this need to organize themselves as in associations or groups like business has to do, because if a ministry wants to change a law, of course they should consult with business and with stakeholders, but in the end they are the decision makers and lawmakers, and they can introduce laws. So for them, they are in a stronger position. You know, the need for them to communicate their interests is less important than of the business, because business wants to influence laws, and politics can influence business by making laws. So of course they have to include interest groups, but in the end they would have the right to introduce a law, and business has to comply with. So the balance is a bit different. Politics is much more powerful in this relation than business when it comes to formal competences in the lawmaking process.
Good, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Other questions, please? If no other questions, no, we don't have other questions.
Okay.
So, Mr. Stefan, I would like to express our appreciation, and I would like to thank you for your effort, for your time, and your answers to our questions. Some maybe it's not much more related, was not so much related with the topic, but anyway, thank you very much for your effort. Herkese teşekkür ederim. Çok sağ olun. Bugünkü tədbirimiz Google YouTube kanalımızdan, üniversitenin YouTube kanalında canlı yayımlandı və o deməkdir ki, artıq YouTube'da qalacaqdır. İstənilən şəxs izləyə bilər. Əgər əlavə kiminsə mövzu ilə bağlı sualları yaranarsa, bizlə əlaqə saxlaya bilər ki, bu məktubu, sizin suallarınızı biz cənab Stefana göndərə bilərik, yönləndirə bilərik. I just told that if any questions, because it will be on the YouTube channel, so if any questions related with the topic, they can ask us, and we can forward their questions to you.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. And from time to time, I'm in Baku. Of course, now it's a bit hard to, but when traveling is possible, I will be back in Baku for sure. And let's stay in touch, and let's see if when I'm in Baku that we can have a meeting. So that is what I can offer, and hopefully in the second half of the year traveling is possible. And then let's see when it leads me to Baku again.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Take care. Greetings to Azerbaijan, to Baku.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.